Hey guys. So yesterday, a lot of people were talking about Netflix winning the bidding wars to go into exclusive talks with Warner Brothers, and basically, a lot of folks weren't too thrilled about this. I mean, obviously, it's a very controversial move, but Netflix has made it be known. The CEO, co-CEO, all of them have made it be known that you know, they're going to basically leave. I'm trying to find the right word to say. They're going to leave Warner Brothers as is. Like, they're going to own it. They're going to be the parent company, but they're going to leave it as is. They're not going to really, they're not really going to change it up at all. They might change. Like, okay, I'm not necessarily saying they wouldn't change things at all, but they basically have said that they're just going to leave it as B. Things are going to go on as normal. HBO Max will be still its own streaming service. Basically, the only change that they may have hinted at is shorter theatrical windows. And, this all sounds good on paper and all sounds good verbally, right? But yet you have a lot of folks in Washington, well, not just Washington, but in Hollywood, the WGA, the Writers Guild, members of the Actors Guild, anonymous A-listers and all that, writing letters and stuff to Congress, letting them know, hey, you need to put an end to this before it really starts to ramp up and get close to being official. And like I and everybody else have said, there's going to be a lot of hurdles that they're going to have to go through, that being Netflix and Warner Brothers, to get this done. And probably one of the biggest hurdles is going to be out of Washington, D.C., and mostly with Congress, mostly with the House of Representatives, and mostly with the Department of Justice, the DOJ, and even Trump. Because, basically they all feel that, they all feel basically that there's something that doesn't sound right. Like there's something that, kind of aligns with what they're being told through these letters and these petitions and people, talking to them. Excuse me, they're talking to them and letting them know, hey, this feels suspicious. Like, they basically are telling them, look, we don't have a problem with the deal. It just feels like it came out of left field. It's just like it came out of nowhere. And you have Paramount and others, the Ellisons, and all of them saying, hey, this is not right. This needs to be, this needs to be looked into. And you even have the Ellisons, according to reports, whether you believe them or not, planning, maybe with the support of the Department of Justice, maybe with the backing of Trump, to do a hostile bid, put in a hostile bid to overtake control of, of this deal, basically take it away from Netflix and do what they feel is needed, do what they feel is right. Because Paramount, they said basically if they were to win, they want the whole shebang. And they feel that this deal was just Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers, acquiring HBO Max and the assets, and then letting Warner Brothers spend the next year and a half during this negotiating process to try to sell off Discovery Global to whoever. They feel like it's basically something that, just it just doesn't feel right. Like something just, the dots are not connecting in their opinion. And, they want, and obviously, I think at the end of the day, they just want it looked into. Like, I believe, honestly, this is my opinion. I believe, honestly, they don't feel any ill will as much as, they may play it off that they do, or, certain media outlets, entertainment media outlets, play it off that they do and everything. I don't think at the end of the day they really have any ill will. I think they're just suspicious. I think they're just, kind of concerned that something is not, being told, being told publicly or being revealed publicly as to, what really is going to be involved with this deal. Like you could have the CEO of Netflix come out and and his team come out and say, hey, we're going to leave everything as is. The only thing is we might change the length of the theatrical window just by a bit, kind of shorten it just by a bit and everything. Um, you have them saying all this stuff, but again, as I mentioned earlier, it sounds good on paper and it sounds good verbally, but not a lot of people trust them to stay true to that word. In fact, you even have people that talk about it here on, here on YouTube and, and social media, and a lot of them are saying that, yeah, it sounds good on paper and verbally, but how do we know we can trust them? How do we know they're going to live up to the end of the deal? They don't, because for as far as they're concerned, if this deal goes through, and a lot of people feel like, despite what others may say or attempt to prevent, it from happening, and because of what they say is what I'm trying to, is what I was trying to say, that despite what they say and do and try to prevent, that's what I was trying to say. That basically this deal is going to go through one way or another, whether they like it or not. It's going to go through, and there's not going to be much they can do about it. There's not much they can do to block it. I mean, the only hurdle it might face that's going to hold off on the deal becoming official, is the DOJ and Trump, and that might hold it up for maybe another year or so. I mean, because the projected time is between now and next year to get this done, maybe early 2027 to get it done. But if anything holds it up, which could be in my case, in my opinion, and I'm sure everybody shares the same opinion, could be Trump and the DOJ. You could possibly be looking at mid to late 2027 into 2028, basically election year, for for this deal to be finalized if anything does hold it up. Because as I mentioned in my long video yesterday, which is right here, by the way, basically they got to go through all these hurdles. The DOJ, the Congress, the House, they're all going to want to make sure that this deal is on the up and up. They're going to want to make sure that everything that Netflix is agreeing upon, with this purchase, with this transaction of ownership, to them, that everything they're promising stays true. That they keep those promises. That what they're agreeing upon in the contract, is what they're going to agree upon, upon ownership of the WB. That's basically probably, like I said, the big hurdle they gotta face and everything. And if anything is found out that doesn't, show that they're going to live up to that, then that could be something that holds things, up for a while until Netflix either just drops out, pays that $5 billion breakup fee to Netflix, and then not Netflix, but Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers, as I said yesterday, could use that to stabilize themselves independently for a time and make themselves more appealing for another sale to, let's say, Paramount or Universal, Comcast, or whoever in the near future. So basically, this deal. There is a strong chance it's going to go through, but the only thing I think that will hold it up, not indefinitely, but a lot longer than, the projected finalized date, the projected finish date, next year into early 2027. The only thing that can hold it up will be Trump and the DOJ, because they're going to want to know, like I said, that that Netflix is saying, that that they're saying, the CEO is saying, and all that everything, they're promising and saying about, oh, we're going to keep it intact, nothing's going to change, things are still going to be theatrical and all that. They're going to want to make sure all of that's on the up and up. And as far as theatrical releases go, they're going to want to make sure that the CEO of Netflix promises that the theatrical releases, mostly for Warner Brothers, will be, the normal 45 to 90 day, 45 to 60 day, or 30 to 45 day release window, and not the short 2.5, 3 week window. And that's it. I think that'll be the only thing that they're going to want to make sure gets agreed upon and doesn't change. But yeah, that's, in my opinion, the only thing that can hold up, the Netflix acquiring WB officially by the end of next year into early 2027. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.